Hey there, where you going? No, man, you got the right classroom. Come on in, take a seat beside me, my friend. Look, here comes T.A. Charlie.
I'm T.A. Charlie, and you're watching The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble, you search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean that you got to set up an account, but it's fast and easy and it's free. I did it. You can do it. For those slower members of class, you can also catch us on Facebook, on Twitch, and Twitter. And okay, sometimes on YouTube too, when Professor's not going to get himself censored. Mostly that's just Wednesdays. Then you can catch the podcast after the show. Professor will upload it to Podbean and to iHeart and Spotify. Just look for The Road to Concord. And you can go to the blog page. That's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you find all your show notes and study notes and all your handouts for the class. And you can call us 229-469-0335. Most of the times I've got the phone working. And finally, you can email the professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow right now, but he will eventually get around to emailing you back.
Yeah, we all know T.A. Charlie isn't all there. Now just stay seated and give the class a chance. Let's see what Professor Joe has on the lesson plan for today.
All right, morning, folks. It's been one of those weeks. Sat down last night trying to do a lesson plan. Didn't come. I ran into some things I'll explain here in just a few minutes. Just like, So, today is going to be one of those days. This is one of the ones that makes BB cringe because I'm off the chain and unsupervised. There's nobody here to reel me in if I get a little too carried away. So we might get there. What was going on last night? I was going to do a logic class, right? For those of you who can't see the chalkboard, I'm going to be showing you a bunch of books today. I wish I could do better with it, but I can't. I don't have it for the slides this time. I was looking at the critical thinking effect. This is part of the Think Kinetic or Think Kinetic series. And I was looking at that one. And then there's this critical thinking and logic mastery book. And it's 3-in-1. And it's about critical thinking in a nutshell, conquer logical fallacies, the habit of critical thinking. And I know what's in them. Don't get me wrong. But I don't like to reinvent the wheel. So I was going to them to see if I could just maybe get, how did they phrase everything I want to teach the class? And I realized I'm going to be covering the same ground 2 and 3 times if I did this yesterday. And I don't like taking the same piece of territory 2 and 3 times. So I set that aside. We're going to do it soon. We're going to start doing it in dedicated classes that are very purposely driven here. And we're going to start doing our own artwork so that I don't have to borrow other people's stuff. And we're going to be putting it up on YouTube. By the way, today's show is on YouTube. I'm not going to get censored for what I do today. We're going to start using YouTube more. We're going to start using small short clips. We're going to probably start another. We'll get to all of this. What happened last night is you know what? It's time to do a different class, different type of class I'm not good at. This is the human touchy-feely thing. There's a lot of changes coming up in the next 2 weeks. It's going to happen fast, finally. I've been warning you, been threatening you, been promising. Jason says so many books to read after tax season. I'm going to walk you through these, Jason. He's on Rumble, so I can't throw his comment up on the screen. But I'm going to actually use the books. We're going to talk. I'll teach through the chapters. This is what I'm talking about. I'm going to get more purposeful in what we're doing here. But I'll get to the show in a minute. He says so many books. You got no idea. The Road to Concord, right up here, this. I always thought, that's just the road that went to Lexington Green where the battle was fought. And it is. But it's so much more than that. It's about the American Covenant. This one's by Marshall Foster. Some of you might have already bought this because I mentioned it early on in the show. I said we're going to go through it. That's coming up too. And I'll get to all of that. But before we get back to the show, let me explain how I got to where I'm at in my life. And I'm going to leave off the Marine Corps part. That's not important. Growing up, and there's a class member now that there's at least two of you that know me from back when I was younger. One of you knows me from high school. I don't know if that person's watching or listening today or not. But growing up, I used to boast I was never going to get married and I wasn't going to have children. The two biggest blessings in my life outside of Yahweh, God, right now, are my wife and my children. So I am very grateful that God has a sense of humor. You boast to him, he play, oh yeah, watch this. So I boasted about that. I said I was never going to be a mechanic. The Marine Corps was like, oh yeah, watch this. Said I was never going to be a businessman. And we'll get to that in a minute, but a buddy of mine who's recently passed away, he's like, oh yeah, watch this. And then I said I would never teach. And you folks have gone, oh yeah, get back on the show, Joe. So everything I boasted about that I wasn't going to do when I was a kid has turned out to be my life. Life lesson there is be careful what you tell the universe, tell God you're not going to do. You're pretty much just waving a red flag at the bull, and he's going to, you're going to get the horns. So let me start here. It started out with me on talk radio, late 1990s. There was a local show, Rob Stark. He did a local radio show here. A lot like, those of you that know me from The Morning Drive with Steve Nichols. And now he's doing Freedom Networks. It's a lot like that show was. And I called in a lot on Rob's show. And eventually Rob ran afoul of management, got replaced by a guy named Bernie Thompson. If you're on Facebook, especially locally where I'm at, Bay County, Panama City, Florida area, Bernie Thompson's show is on Facebook now. He does real good work. He is he's a pit bull of a watchdog for local government. I wish every local area had a Bernie Thompson in their hometown. He's doing real journalism. He actually goes to the meetings and televises it for you, films it. I mean, he takes you right there. So he helps you keep up with local events in your local townships, real close to your home. Gosh, he's doing good work. He's libertarian minded. And he knows what journalism is. But, he's good. So I know both of those men, and I used to get on the radio a lot with commenting. And then we went to a meet and greet one time for Bernie's show. I met a lot of the audience that were fans of whatever it is I'd call in, and that's when I was doing a lot of political commentary. And they encouraged me to start blogging, and I got involved with a man named Michael Smith. And back then he wrote under the name Utah Prez. He started a blog page called the Rio Norte line, and you can still find it. I'm still an administrator on it. You just go to the RioNorteLine.com. It's named after the Rio Norte line out of Atlas Shrugged. And you'll find a lot of my old writings there. I'm writing under Black 3 Actual. That's my call sign when I was in the military during Desert Storm. But you'll find me there. And Mike is now on Facebook. He does some really good work. And politically minded. But when Mike, he took off for a while, he had to go to the North Sea because he was an oil executive. And he was gone for about a year and a half. I ran his blog page. When he came back, I started the Road to Concord, my blog. You go to the roadtoconcord.com, you find it. That's where I met Jimmy Zinker. He's in the audience. He's one of your classmates. Jimmy got me in touch with Steve Nichols and was largely responsible for me getting on to Steve Nichols' show. And I did a monthly guest host there. That's where I started to teach, but political commentary, but also teaching. And then from there, I started this show, this daily show where I do my own webcasting. And I was connected with Freedom Networks with Steve Nichols. You just go to Freedom Networks with an X, networx.com. You'll find him. He's still broadcasting. We were on there for a while. We had our own things, but it was an amicable parting for those of you who know the history. There's no hard feelings there. It's just this show's not a fit with what he's trying to do. And that's okay. It's a good thing, man. diversity of thought and opinion is a good thing, especially if it's all done for the right reasons. So that's how this show started. But before this show, I was doing something else. And I'm going to show you some pictures of what I used to do here in a minute. But first, my company's name was Tiger Model Designs. And let me do this. That's the logo. Now, before I get into the history, I just want to, real quick, for those who don't know, and most, I'm assuming that's almost the entire audience. I'm getting notes from the class that Rumble's freezing again. That's part of what we're going to talk about today. If you have to, if you're on Rumble, and if you have to, we're up live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. You can go find another venue for today. That's why I'm keeping them. But anyhow, this logo. If you saw the movie Fury, there was a tiger tank in that movie. It's the end scene that shoots up everybody but Fury. The logo here, right there, there's a stalking tiger in the background. That's the logo for the Tiger Tank unit in the famed Rommel Africa Corps. So when I designed this logo as TMD Tiger Model Designs with the stalking tiger in the background, anybody in my industry, if you were into 135th scale tanks, you immediately knew that whatever this logo was had something to do with World War II history, especially German history, because that's a very famous picture. Just about everybody in my industry knows about it. So what happened is I was building scale model tanks for hobby, 135th scale model tanks. You see them, plastic models, right? Just whatever, man toys. And I used to complain a lot about all the different, these companies would make detail parts to make your models better, make them more accurate or more detailed. And I never liked anything that was on the market. I was always complaining. That's just the nature of who I was. I was a jerk back then. And a friend of mine who was, he used to say that all modelers were geeks, trolls, or mutants, and that he was a troll. If you ever went to a model show, a model meeting where there's a competition where we display our models, he was right. I was a geek, but we're all geeks, trolls, and mutants. And all you got to do is sit back and look. BB will tell you if you ever get to meet her in person. Yeah, all you got to do is look. You don't have to, no, they don't even need to talk. You'll know who the geek, troll, and mutant is. But my buddy was a troll. And he told me one time, just either shut my mouth or go do better. So I did. And ignorance, that's where I learned ignorance is bliss sometimes. So I started my company just on a dare. And what it was is I wasn't aware that I couldn't do it the way I ended up doing it. And because I didn't have this preconceived idea or formula of how everything had to be done. And that's what this show is. I was told you got to talk about politics, Joe, or you won't be successful. Well, first of all, it depends on how I define successful. I don't define it the way they do. They're all about the money, money, money. So if they're not making money, they don't think they're successful. If I help you in a way that actually makes an impact in your life, I've been successful. That's the success I seek in this show. And I got a report from the field this morning on the phone right before the show started. I can't share it. It's not my story to share, but boy, did it make me feel good. Because I had it wasn't me, but some of what I've taught that class member of yours really helped him in his personal life with his friends. And that's a good feeling to know you've helped another human being in a way that matters. Gosh, that felt good. So that's how I define success. So my formula for this show, it's working so far. We're going to fine tune it soon. But anyhow, with Tiger Model Designs, my company, nobody told me I couldn't do it that way. So I just found a way to do it that way. And from the very first year of existence, I won the most, actually, they created the award for one of the things I made that first year. Created it. Best Multimedia Kit of the Year from the most prestigious modeling club. It's called AMPS, Armor Modeling Preservation Society. And that was a cool thing. But All I had to go on with was instinct, my goal, and enthusiasm. And experience taught me the rest. And I want to stop right here and I want to share a few things of what I learned with you. First things first, I learned ego. Oh boy, can that get you in trouble. Because I was so successful when I first started my company. I became the biggest fish in a small pond, meaning it's a small industry globally. But boy, was I a big fish in it. Every scale tank modeler knew who I was. And it swelled my head to the point where I couldn't get in the door. And it almost cost me my company because I was an idiot. And it taught me, God used it to teach me true humility. And I've tried to hold on to that ever since. But running my company also taught me about the cost of running a business. Everybody and his brother say, oh, you got a business. I'm going to make money off of you. I'm going to make it to where you got to pay me because you're the one creating wealth. You're the one running a business. You actually create wealth. And as soon as you have a small business, big business, it doesn't matter. As soon as you got a business, every leech and parasite in the world comes out of the woodwork. Just like I got all these things all the time. Hey, you got to have all these OSHA. The law's passed. I got to have OSHA billboards all over the place. A little poster that I could print off for $1 at the local store. No, that's not good enough. I got to buy one of these things. Government mandates it. $75. Yeah, things like that, folks. I found out exactly how much money a company has to sink into nothing so that they can pay other people who are using the government to force you to buy their product. God, that ticks me off to this day. You don't hear about it. Most business owners won't tell you about it. They just soak it up, deal with it, and move on. I'll tell you about it when the time comes, but I am sick and tired of the leeches in this world. Go make something yourself and work in the competitive. Oh, but that's work, Joe. I just want to go pay. Here, politician, take my $1,000, pass this law. Now everybody has to buy one of my signs. That is everywhere in our society. You know, you got the road mile markers. That was a law. You got to pass that up. You know how much it costs to put those signs up? About $150 a sign. And that's when I found out about it 20 years ago. For each little mile marker, it took about $150 to put that thing up. You got to put one up every mile. And there's usually only one or two companies that do it. The government's not doing that. They contract that out. Now, the DOT people might actually drive it in the ground, but they're not the ones that are doing the signs. There's tons of this stuff, and I ran into it when I was running my business. And then I found out just how much the government sticks its hand in my pocket. It's not just my share of the taxes for my employees. Oh, it is everything in its. I only had 7 people at the height of my production. And I did not know this, that at one point I was the largest company in the world in my industry. I did not know that, not at the time. But I almost had to hire an accountant just to keep up with all the government gobbledygook that they wanted out of a small business. I'm sitting here trying to give 7 people an income. And all the government wants to do is shut me down because it wants so much of what I'm making. Why doesn't it just, because if they're all unemployed, Joe, then they're on welfare. And all I got to do is steal that from another businessman. Or better yet, nowadays I just print it, which steals it from everybody because it makes your money worth less and less and less. So yeah, I started learning all about this stuff, and it is a constant struggle to keep your business running. You have no idea. Your business will become you. Some of the struggles. Yeah, I'll tell you one. You go to the post office. Have you noticed how much it costs to ship something today? Do you know why? You are subsidizing eBay and Amazon and Walmart and everybody else who does big volume shipping. You don't believe that, and they'll tell you that's not true. I know it's true. I made real good friends with my local postmasters. I know the girls told me what's going on. A couple of years ago, I noticed eBay changed the way it ships overseas. You got to ship to a central point in the United States. It has a U.S. address. Then they put a different label on it, and then they finally send it to where it's going. Now the United States Post Office uses the same system. That's because eBay designed it. handed it to the post office. And now the post office's rates keep going up and up and up. eBay's rates go down, down, down. You're subsidizing. You're paying more as an individual to ship so that these big companies can pay less. And this is when eBay, and not just eBay, but Amazon, they started using the United States Post Office to ship a lot of stuff, where before they were using UPS and FedEx. Did you also know that FedEx and the United States Post Office are business partners? When you overnight through FedEx, you're actually overnighting through the post office. So FedEx gets a big discount rate with the post office, marks it, puts a markup on it, and you give it to them. They charge you God knows how much money to overnight it. Then they hand it to the post office, where you could have just gone to it would have cost you more to go to the post office, because the post office has to charge more for that so that they can stay in business, so that they can give these big businesses discounts. This is all stupidity, and it's all just greed. And I get it now. The left is right about this. This is all at the corporate level. It is. But that's what my company did. And it's got to the point now where I cannot even get my raw materials to make the product I was making. They used to make just these little bitty, simple, stupid, you see them all the time, little thin plastic bags. They're called poly bags. They're made out of polycarbon or whatever. Just small little bags. I used to be able to buy 1,000 of them for like $7, the smallest ones I use. I can't even buy them now. I can't. They're not available. They've just disappeared off the market. But that's at packaging and everything. I used to use boxes to pack my product in that cost me about 45 cents a box. Now it's $1.50. A small business cannot afford that. You can't pass that on to your customer. Not in this market. So everything's being done in whether by hook or by crook. I don't know if it's intentional or not. I'm not going to go to that level. And not on the man's, not on human level. I think there's an intelligence design behind all this. I do. But not on the human level. But it's all being worked on. It's by design. But what I did for a living, I want to share some of this with you. I'm going to make it where you can see full screen. That right there, that's a German half-track. It's a maintenance vehicle. It's called a FAMO. That's the company that made it. SDK, Sonderkraftwagen 9/1. That's the official name. No big deal. What you're looking at right there is that's the kit that won me the Multimedia Kit of the Year award in 2001. But now I know this is toys. I got it. But just pay attention to me for a second. Just listen, because this is big for me. That right there is the single best-selling resin model kit of all time in the world. And I made it. I made that master. I made the kit. I sell it. I did I do everything you see in the light gray. Now the yellowish color, that's the model that you use as a base kit. I'm making a conversion to turn it into what you see. Everything you see in light gray, that's me. I've sold almost 4,000 of these in an industry where if you sell 1,000 items, it's considered to be wildly successful. I have sold about 3,800 of these things. I can make this thing in my sleep. That's a close-up. This thing's small. It's, that thing right there is maybe 8 or 9 inches long and about 4.5 inches wide. That's how small the detail. And my customer wants me to get every one of those bolts in the right order and the right pattern. That's got to be right. It's got to be correct, or they don't want it. They'll just skewer me. There's another kit I made. This is also a FAMO. This is the basic half track. The stuff you see in tan yellow, that's the kit. It's the same kit as before. It's the same basic model as that one right there. But what I'm doing is I'm converting it into an armored half track that carries a flak 88. And again, that was considered that's the pinnacle of my industry. I'm the best one that's ever made one of those. Guys love that thing. They'd kill for me to keep making this. And I don't. That's almost a $200 model right there for my conversion. And then the model you got to put it on runs you about 90. So if you want to build that right there, that'd run you $290 before you paint it. So it's not a cheap hobby. There's another picture of it. Everything in the light gray is what I do. Now this here is a German recovery vehicle. It's a Burger Panther. It's made to tow other tanks. This is the single most detailed resin kit that was ever produced in my industry, ever. That's the interior. Everything you see there, everything, I made from scratch. And then I make rubber molds of it so I can mass produce it. That's the other side of it right there. I once had a reviewer say all he had to do was reach in and hit the start button and the thing would have ran. If you saw pictures of the real thing, that right there has everything the real thing had in it. I mean, right down to the nut, bolt, and screw. I did a decent job with this. That's when the movie Fury, the Tiger tank, that's the prototype vehicle for a Tiger tank. I made that one. That right there is that's a conversion for the tank you saw in the movie. That's an Africa Corps Tiger tank. That's what the tank in the movie Fury looked like. And then I used to work with some other guys. The master for this, everything you see there was made by a guy named Carl Van Sweden. Good friend of mine. He's the older brother I didn't have. He lives in Michigan. So he made that master. He also made the masters for this kit. This is an American mortar carrier. We make everything you see in the gray. The green is the donor kit. That's the turret. It's very detailed stuff, folks. This is a kit that we make. We make the whole thing. That's a full-up trailer. It's an armored ammunition trailer. And then that one's an unarmored trailer. Both of the masters were made by a guy named Dan Norman. But we produce the kits. He sold me the masters. We make the kit. Everything you see in gray there, this is a British tank, Matilda tank from World War II. It fought in France in the early part of the war. That was made by an airline pilot by the name of Mike Sills. That kit there, that's an STZ. It's a Russian T-34. STZ is the factory. This is one of the tanks that would have been at Stalingrad. The master was made by a literal rocket scientist, works for Raytheon, puts rockets into space. And his name is Scott Negron. All of these guys are my friends. I made them friends over the course of almost 21 years when I was running this company. The point here is I made my own living, and I helped other guys do things too that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And as I got further along in my business, I quit worrying about what I did, and I gave all the credit to my pattern makers. The problem was most of the time my hand was in there somewhere. Just about every one of those things that I got, the pattern makers were good, but I tweaked it. I made it better, and I never took credit for it. Yahweh taught me humility and dedication and service to my customer using that company. And I quit trying to make money with it. And I started learning to serve the people who were ordering my product. If you go online and you look up Tiger model designs, I'm going to be all over your Google search. And you're also going to find all sorts of praise for my product, especially my customer service. I once had a customer complain on a discussion group, an online discussion group, said that I didn't take care of him. He had a customer complaint, said that I didn't take care of it. He was jumped on in the first minute or two by 8 different people saying, "You're lying." They flat told him, "You're lying." They said, if you had a customer complaint issue, Joe handled it, period. And that's what I focused on most. But before the quality of my product, I took care of my customer, even when I knew they were lying to me. And it had nothing to do with me trying to run the business way. It had everything to do with me trying to run it according to the way the Bible taught me to run it. I worked as unto Yahweh. And that business succeeded. And it was a lot like what I'd show you here. Sometimes I tell you I watch the Rumble numbers and the Facebook numbers at the same time. And they help me tell which part of my audience I'm talking to, how I'm doing good or bad with each one. Whenever I started getting away from the way Yahweh wants me to live my life, my business suffered. And every time I got back online where I'm supposed to run my life, everything smoothed back out and ran great. He'll talk to you if you let him. You just got to learn to listen. But I noticed something over time. When I started my job, my business, I loved the customer. I could not wait to go to the model shows. Everybody get together, they'd put their models in the competition, and the vendors would come and you'd go shopping for things you're not going to see anywhere else, and you'd get some really cool stuff. And then you'd get to the bars and the restaurants and the lounges, and you all meet up. You'd have friends that you'd get to see every year or so when that model meeting was going on. Um, it was a good time, but it's not that way anymore. The internet's changed us as people, and I had a unique perspective as somebody who dealt with the public day in and day out on a very personal level. I ran my business as though me and my individual customer were friends, always. I got yelled at by other businessmen all the time. Joe, you're sharing too much information. But my customers come to think of me as a friend. And over the last 7, 8, 9, 10 years, they changed. My friends got ugly. Even the good ones started getting ugly. And it's because everything they started to do was online anonymously behind a screen name. At least that's the point where I can peg this to. And I don't like doing my job anymore. And that's one of the biggest reasons I closed the company. We're changing as a people, as a society, as a species. And I hate it. I don't like seeing it. Um, I want to do something about it. That's part of the mission of what we're doing here now. What this show is. Now this is where I'm going to get into a few other things for you. This is where we're going to start talking about the show and you. You're my customer now. And I don't mean that in a business sense necessarily, but we'll get to that in just a second. I want to show you something. This is where I'm sitting right now. That's where we've been coming to you for almost, 6 months now? That's an apartment that I built above my father's shop years ago. It's it's not even 8 foot wide, folks. That's not even 8 foot wide. And the flag and the TV are on a rolling backboard that we can move, because to the left in this picture, to your left, behind it, there's a little alcove that's built into the wall for a kitchen. It's a kitchen and bathroom back to back. Otherwise, this apartment's just 45 foot long, 8 foot wide. Very narrow. It was a convenience thing at a time in my life where I needed a place to live for a year and a half while I put my life back together. But that's where we've been coming from. This is not a long-term solution. This is. Now that my son Kyle has moved out, that's his old bedroom. Now it's still only 8 foot wide, but we've got room to set up a proper studio here. I'm hoping that the new real in the flesh Charlie will meet me here maybe Sunday morning. I haven't talked to him yet, but he's listening. He just found out that this is something that's going to be coming as a request to him here later today. Yes. Your classmate Marianne Boatwright says it's better than a foxhole. Yes, it is. But this is where I hope to put up our new studio in the next week. Might even start on some of it this Sunday, but by next Sunday, by a week from this Sunday, the new studio will be up and ready to go. And we're going to start working from here. That's step one. We have to have a proper So Charlie just chimed in. He got the message. We'll coordinate. We have to have a proper studio from which to broadcast, because perception's reality, right? If I keep doing this as though I'm just some yokel stuck in the corner of his house somewhere, that is the perception. That will be what people, if you're a visitor to the show the first time, that's what you're going to think we're doing. Just some local yokel. And I mean, the way I dress and my hairdo, I've already been told I'm playing right into that. But, I've already been told by one of y'all I need to go see a stylist to change my hair, change the way I dress. That's not going to change, folks. I am who I am. I don't do pretenses. But we can change the environment so that we look like we're actually trying to do this the right way. See, this show's going to continue, if it's going to succeed, It has to be set up and run like a business. Now, I'm not going to think of it as the one, but I'm a businessman now by heart. And by that, I don't mean necessarily, well, he's out there just to make money with it. No, no. Yes and no. I've told you before, to me, what I learned from my business that I ran for 21 years, money is the fuel that goes in the engine. If I want to keep the engine running, you got to put gas in it. So, yeah, we're going to have to find a way for this show to create the money it needs to survive. And I haven't harped on that yet, but it's coming. It's coming. And I got some ideas. We're not going to Nobody told me I couldn't do it the way we're going to try to do it. Like I told you, I'm a little bit like a cartoon character. Don't tell me I can't walk on air if I'm in the middle of doing it. You just keep to yourself. So the only way I know it's not going to work the way I'm thinking is by trying it. And the first thing I have to do, reality of the world, this thing has to be set up as a company. And that's going to cost money in and of itself. First things first, I've got to get myself malpractice insurance real soon. You know, it's liability slander insurance. It's just one of those things I got to do. Exactly. The Arctic tortoise on Rumble says, "Never tell me the odds." Exactly. Don't tell Hans the odds. So we'll have to get the insurance and a few other things. And like I said, I told you earlier, Rumble's been sticky. I'm going to explain to you why, folks, right now. All I can afford at the moment is a Rumble program that allows for just so many people to watch the show at a time. You see, it's not just the bandwidth on my end, it's the bandwidth on Rumble's end. It's how much data they'll let people eat up. I got to go to the next system. Well, right now, one of your classmates pays for that. That's been his contribution to the class. And he asked me not to say anything, otherwise I'd let y'all know who it was. I would thank them publicly for their help. But this individual chose to remain anonymous. But that's costing this individual about $26 a month. The next program is $100 a month. Doesn't sound like a lot in the long run, but $100 a month for that, $100 a month for StreamYard, so much a month for this, so much a month for that. And the next thing you know, we've got to fork out $700-800 a month just to put the program out on the internet. This is what I mean. If you want to do something like this, it eats things up. It eats it up quick. Ms. Marianne Boatwright says, "Tell my anonymous, classmate, thank you." You just did, Marianne. He watches the show. Thank you for that. And Jimmy Zinker says the same thing. Thank you to that classmate. You just told him, Jimmy, because I know he's watching the show. So there's you got that. Then we got to pay for the internet modem, and then we got to pay the electric bill around here. So, like I said, when people ask me, "What's it cost for the show?" A couple $100, $150. No, guys, no. There's $1,000 overhead just right off the bat. Just throw that away every month. If we're going to start throwing the show in a way that's not going to cause you all to start hanging up when we have these numbers watching, yeah, just $1,000 a month overhead, right out the bat. That's just one of those things that people don't think about. I've got to, because I want to keep this thing going. So where's that been coming from lately? Well, we've got 4 people that have donated to this show. And it comes up to about $250 a month. Guess who's been footing the rest? And guess who hasn't really mentioned it or asked for a thing from you yet? It's coming. First things first, now what we got to do is we've got to put a real sharp mission statement on this show. Up till now, and I for a lot of you who have been with me the whole time, you're not going to like this comment, but it's true from my perspective. I've been winging this thing. This right now, up till this point, it's just been winging it. I've been learning my way. I've been feeling my way into this show, what it is that I want to do, how do I want to do it. I haven't even learned the full capabilities of StreamYard yet, the studio. I've got to learn more. What is the fullest extent of this program that I can use to produce the best product I can give you? That's why I haven't asked you to help me yet. I'm not serving you at full capacity yet. And I'm not going to ask somebody to contribute to something that is not my best effort. But right now I need to put a sharp pointed mission statement on this program. What is it I want to do? Yeah, I want to serve you. That's not a sharp pointed mission statement. I want to teach. That's not a sharp pointed mission statement. What exactly do I want to teach? To what purpose? To what end? How? I am seeking your input today. Comment sections, but ideally, what I would love to see, and I know it takes time. Most of y'all don't have it. Most of y'all don't think your opinion matters, but I would love to see an email from every classmate that pays attention to this show, who values this show. Joe at theroadtoconcord.com. I want to know what it is what do you like about the show? What do you not like? What do you want from it? What should I cut out? And not everybody's going to agree, and that's fine. But in my old business, the modeling business, the Secret Squirrel once told me I was the company. I am Tiger Model Designs because I have a knack. I don't know how. I just have an instinctual knack for what the modeler is going to buy. I never really had a flop. In my 21 years, we never really put out a product that flopped. We put a couple out that didn't sell more than 100, 150 units. And for me, that was a flop. But for the industry, that was a success. I had different standards in my business. I literally had my competition come up to me at shows and look me in the face and say, Joe, we measure our product by you and your standards. We can't do what you're doing. You're the bar we compete against. When your competitors tell you you're the best in the industry, if you're not a humble person, it will swell that head big time. But what do I do now? How do I become the best at what I do here? First things first, I know that this show is different. Raw dog, I'm a double O. I don't know, the message in Rumble, I don't get that one. That one went over my head. Shoom. But we're going to make one of the things we do. I told you at the beginning, I didn't want to be like every other show out there. Got to be different somehow. I've got to feed you in a way that nobody else is feeding you. I've got to give you something you can't find anywhere else on the internet. Something of value. So anything that you can help me with, what works on the show, what doesn't work, email me, please. Just word vomit. It doesn't have to sound great. I don't care. If you've been with me any length of time, you know by now that I'm a little different. The things that would ruffle some people's feathers, just, I don't even see them. So do what you can. I need your input. I just want to know what it is we can do to help things get better. One of the other things I know that I'm looking at, once we get the studio set up, we can actually turn the slideshows that we make into PDF files that you can download. So you can literally, all the graphics I put up on the screen, we can literally download that, put that into a download that you can put on your computer and keep. Now, you won't have my voice overlay over it, but you'll have the slideshows, and those are going to start getting better. We'll have more time. Up until now, I've been putting your lesson plan together between 9 and 12 o'clock at night every night, sometimes into 1 o'clock in the morning. And in about 5-6 days, I'll have all day. When the show ends, I'll have all day long to do this, to put the next show together, and I'll have help, at least a little bit. That's another thing. When we move into the new studio and I have an actual producer here, for the short term, this is ministry work for him and I. We're not going to be getting paid. This is just straight up working as unto Yahweh. So he and I will be doing this for a whole different reason. There's nothing going to be going in the paycheck. And that might require, because of his life, it might require we move the time of the show again to 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. We might have to set it back an hour like we originally were. I know that a lot of you like it being later. I got that. It gives you time to get into work, get settled. I can't help this. There's going to be certain things that are going to be driven by the realities of the life of the men who are putting this show on for you. And women too, if we have one that shows up that wants to help us. And I got one in mind when her work schedule settles down. I'm going to be leaning on her to help us with some graphic designs. Actually, I think I might know two. But we're going to work on that. The Arctic tortoise, he can't keep making our videos. That's a busy man, guys. If you knew who he was and what he does for a living, he's giving us valuable time when he makes our video clips for us. Valuable time. I couldn't pay the man for his time if I had to. That's not a, we're not, the Arctic tortoise is not some chump kid that sits in his mommy and daddy's basement. This is a, this is a nationally known professional. So we've been very blessed so far, but we may have to move the hour of the show, and we are definitely going to have to change the phone number. Everything else should stay the same, but the phone numbers will have to change because we're going to put a hard line in, and we will no longer have the people who amuse themselves yelling about the snake over my shoulder making it through to the show, because the real life Charlie will introduce them to some military terminology that you won't be able to hear off air. And then the only person that'll be amused is Charlie. Oh. I'm reading a comment on Rumble. Jason puts up Jason's opinion, as Joe would say. I don't think now is the time to critique the show. I mean, you have been working with one arm tied behind your back. Honestly, there's not much to change in my mind. Yeah, but as the show starts to go full force, guys, what could I focus that force on? That's what I'm getting at. I know another thing, that having a real life Charlie in here will help make me better at what I do. Because I've explained this to y'all before. And for those few of you who have seen the show that shall not be revisited, the show that, the name that shall not be named, the Voldemort reference here to Harry Potter, the show that will not be revisited. And I'm a lot like Sheldon, guys. I'm a cross between the character of Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory and the character of House in the movie House. If you mated them two, I'm their love child. I don't always understand or relate to people the way most folks do. You put a normal human being in the room with me who can talk to me in the headset, and things get a little better. So they can, they can be off screen going, "No, don't do that." And it's necessary. It helps keep me on point, and it makes me more palatable, especially to new listeners. If you ever share this show, and God, I hope you do, make sure you tell your friends and family that you're sharing it with. That idiot on the road to Concord, give him time. He comes off one way when you first meet him. Hopefully you can tell them he's not that way once you get to understand who he is. But tell them this is an acquired taste show. You got to get used to what we're doing here. It takes time. It's kind of like, I'll be honest with you, man. When you're a kid, that first cup of coffee or that first beer, those are acquired tastes. They don't taste good. Honestly, they don't. Not until you get used to them. For some people, dark chocolate's an acquired taste. Diet Coke. This show is an acquired taste. I'm well aware of that. I know that. But I'm asking you, I need your feedback. What are we going to do? What do you want to see out of us? Because I know going forward, your show notes, they're going to have to change. That's one area where we can actually provide extra content and value. And I might ask people to, if you want access to the PDF downloadable side of the show, I might ask you to just join we might put a paywall up on the blog, and ask you to do that. And I'm not talking about a ton of money, man. We're maybe $15, $25 a year tops. Probably not even that. I'm not here to get rich. I'm here to get enough gas every month to keep the machine running. And then if it goes after that, then that's cool. the way I'm looking at this one, I'm just going to walk on faith. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do or where I'm supposed to go with this show. I'm just going to step out and do it. How it's going to happen, this is a Yahweh thing. This is a God thing, folks. He'll figure it out. If I'm supposed to be doing this, I'm doing it because he wants me to do it. And if he wants me to do it, as long as I stay on mission and I don't squander what he hands me, it'll happen. He'll make provisions for it. I am literally going to do exactly what I just told you. I'm going to walk on faith. People like, what do we do, Joe? Well, one of the things you do is you lead people. If you want men and women to do things, you got to lead them. And a leader does not lead from the back. A leader says, follow me. So like on Worship Wednesdays, I would love to see everybody follow the Yahweh, God of the Bible, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So how do you do that? Well, one way I do that is to live the life it tells me to live and let you see me doing it. The great theologian Spurgeon, he has a comment, a quote that I love. It says, "You preach the gospel every day, boy. If you have to, use your words." What he's saying is let people see you living it. So if I want you to walk by faith, let me show you what it looks like. I'm going to walk by faith. So starting next week, I start liquidating my old business. Nobody wants to buy it. So I'm going to piece it out. And I'm going to get as much as I can from it. Yahweh will take care of that. He'll send the right money there. And I'm going to hand that to BB, and BB's going to take really good care of that money. Because we're going to have enough for the next 12 months to live on, assuming that we don't make a penny here. And not only have to pay the bills for the money I used to make with the company, but also pay the bills that this company, this show is going to eat up. And I'm going to trust Yahweh to the rest. And well, hey, if you're listening to this show, put a pin in it. Because if this show grows and succeeds, and anybody ever asks you, show me evidence of God, you'll go, this show right here, guys. Right here. He talked to you and predicted it to you and told you if it's supposed to be what it's supposed to be, God's the one that's going to have to make it work. So if it does work, guess what you're going to have? Proof, evidence right in front of you. And if it doesn't work, that's not evidence he's not there. Don't commit that fallacy. That's evidence that this isn't what I was supposed to do. But I have no problem with that. I'm pretty darn sure this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Yes, Jason puts a comment up in Rumble. This could be expensive, but refreshing the website could help. The content is great, but the reorganization is needed. I'm assuming you're talking about the web page, Jason. And you are correct. And that lies all on me. I'm the one who designed that, but that web design is 20 years old. I haven't kept it up to date. But if that's what you're talking about, that is coming. And it's going to be tied very tightly. The blog page, the web page for the Road to Concord, it's going to quit being a blog page. It's going to become the home page of this show. It will be brought up to modern looking standards, and it will be turned into a reference resource site for you. And for the most part, it'll be free. I've got several people that can help me with that, but that's another case of once I have dedicated time to that, I can do it. I know how to do that. And I'm going to make it look more like a magazine page that we can use, and we're going to tie it to our company's Twitter account, and we'll use the Twitter to help share news articles and stuff. We're going to work on this. We're going to use the enemy's devices, social media, against him. We're going to go all Sun Tzu on Satan. Art of War. We're going to use what he's handed us to our advantage. And we're going to do it as efficiently as we can. If you can't see the comments in Rumble, the gentleman who's going to become our real life Charlie just said, Charlie used to be a professional web developer. Just saying, ... So what he just chimed in is that he'll help me fix that thing. I'll introduce you to him. You've already met him once. If you've been with the show a long time, you've met this gentleman that's going to become the real life Charlie. You've met him once. I'll introduce you to him, but he might actually If he keeps to what he told me, he's going to keep Charlie as his screen name. No, Dr. Evil has not exited the Mr. Bakanovic has been keeping me in the closet. I'm not happy about this. I will be back. But until I am allowed out, Hydra will teach me how to be better at persuading the monkeys to follow Hydra. Get gone, Dr. Evil. Yeah, he ain't gone. He's still there. I've just been keeping him in the closet. It's not easy to keep him in there either. He can turn into a cloud and come underneath the crack in the door and then rematerialize, kind of like he's some sort of demonic ghost or something. um, yeah, there are people in the audience, Jason. I'm reading the comments to y'all today. That's another thing that'll get really helpful when we've got a real life when we have a producer, a flesh and blood producer in the show. The screens will be different, and I don't have to worry about running them as much. He'll be able to monitor your comments. He'll be able to throw them up on the screen that I can see and then react to you. And then he can answer you in the live real time if he wants to. And I don't have to. You're going to get more interaction. This is something that I want to find a way to do. I want you involved in this show. Now, so far, all these shows, they don't do that. At least not to the extent that I think they could. And I know why they don't do it, but we're not going to accept that limitation. I'm a Marine at heart, man. Don't tell me I can't do something. I'll find a way to do it. I will find a way to do it. Now, how well it works, I don't know. See, that's another thing that I haven't done yet because it's money. Rumble makes a chat program that works a lot like what you're using now on Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, and Rumble. And it can be made to look just like a phone chat, instant messenger, and it'll work even when the show's not on. You guys would be able to go there and talk as a community 24/7. But that puppy's expensive. To get anything more than, if I want more than 25 people to be able to talk at a time, another $100 a month. So we haven't looked at that yet. But there are ways to do this. There are also ways to tie an old-fashioned chat room to the blog page. Now, I happen to prefer those because those can be archived. So that if you're having a discussion with somebody, with another classmate, that where you're posting links and stuff that's valuable information, all you need to do is save the link to that chat thread. And you can go back and get all that later on. It's also more affordable. That's only $300 a year. And everybody in the world could use it if they want to. So you see, there are other ways to do this stuff. We just got to look into how to do it. And I'm a little retro. I don't mind going back to the way things used to be. I don't like this oversimplification that's being pushed on the world today, where kids can't talk in anything more than a 12 character chat, and that's why they're using abbreviations. Because if you need them to write a full sentence, they're like, what'd you just say? Yeah. If they're dumbing you down, that ain't us. We ain't going to help. And I don't need all the audience to turn into Einsteins, man. That's not the point. But I'd sure as heck like to see everybody turn back into the average person I knew when I was in high school. Now, if you're my generation or older, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you were born late 1990s or 2000s or forward, when we tell you how things used to be different, this isn't a case of like Grandpa says, yeah, things used to be. When I was a kid, when Grandpa said it used to be different, it wasn't all that much different. The 80s were not that far removed from the 1900s. Not really. But the chasm between today and the 1980s, oh my gosh, you got no idea. None. Two different worlds. Entirely two different worlds. It's not the same world related to in different ways. It is two different worlds. This show, I want to try and help bridge that. Take you back to the way things used to be, where we thought and we talked to each other and we actually had meaningful conversations. Things like that. I tell you what, let's take the break real quick. We're not done for today, but I don't know that we'll make the full 2 hours today. But I do have some things I want to show you when we come back. Some of the things that we're going to be putting into the content coming future that are actually going to be very narrowly focused and very educational. Stuff that deals with this, the Road to Concord, that you were not taught, not even in college. I've got it here with me today. I'm going to show you in a minute. See you in 3 minutes. Don't go away. Don't go away. You only need to be, you're going to get out of class early for the weekend. Just be back here in 3 minutes. Okay. The Road to Concord. When I first named the blog page, I was just looking for something that harkened back to the revolutionary period in our country's time. I did not realize how long the Road to Concord actually is at the time I named it that. Very apropos name, and I know that now, and I've told you before, that was a providential naming. That was Yahweh had me name it that. God did. In a nutshell, the American Covenant. This would be the Road to Concord in a nutshell. This, a little bit, the 5,000 year leap, or 6,000, I don't remember what name title is. A little bit of that. But you got to remember the 5,000 year leap and a couple of other books that were written by Skosen. He's a Mormon. And not that I have anything against Mormons, but they look at the history of this country through Mormon eyes, Mormon glasses, and it taints how they should understand it because they separate it from the biblical understanding. And we'll get to that in great detail. But very soon, not next weekend, but the weekend after, probably the very first Friday in April, we're going to start a dedicated series on Fridays that you're not going to want to miss. The first hour will be about the Road to Concord. I'm going to show you how our founding fathers came to be and how it was something that took at least almost 2,000 years to set up, a little over, before their time was ready and they came onto the scene. I'm going to walk you through it. And in the second hour on Fridays, we're going to start walking through reasoning and critical thinking. And if you will stick with us through the summer and into the fall, those of you who think that teaching you a few fallacies made you powerful thinkers, you are going to have no idea what's going to be opened up to you. I'm going to show you how to do what I do. Where somebody will present me something and I'll slice through it in a heartbeat. So I'm going to show you how we do that, how you can learn to do it, and how you can learn to use it to solve problems in your life and make better decisions that will help you avoid the problem in the first place. And it's biblical, but it all works together. I'm going to show you that. But one of the things we're going to do here is we're going to start with this. This book here is called The Ancient Law of Kings, the Noahide Laws. This is about God's law before Moses. That's the first real book of law, written law, constitutional law. That's the first time where we start to try and take right and wrong out of the hands of the king, to move away from a dictator. And then the Magdeburg Confessions. This is from April 1550. This is one of the first letters that starts to try and argue against divine right kings. Say, no, you're not a god. You're just a human being, and you have a God, and you've got an obligation to lead according to his laws, according to the Noahide laws. Then there's the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. It's a proper resistance to tyranny and a repudiation of unlimited obedience to civil government. We're going to go through this one. This is important. All of these books I'm showing you, this used to be taught in high school in liberal arts. John Dewey took this away from you. Yeah. You're going to, Thursdays, Throwback Thursdays, we're going to start meeting some of these enemies in great detail. Then Lex Rex. Lex is the king. It's the law, and Rex is the king. It's a biblical primer on the purpose, place, and power of civil government based on the works of Samuel Rutherford. We're going to go through this. This is in English. These books here that I'm showing you, these are ancient. These are hundreds of years old, in some cases thousands of years old. What you're looking at is just modern editorial printings. Then here is Vindicate contra Tyrannios, a defense of liberty against tyrants. Older books. The authors on these books are just the editor who goes through the older text. Then y'all know this one, the Magna Carta. That's the English Declaration of Independence, basically. You know, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Rights of Man, the Mayflower Compact. We're going to look at that in great detail. We're going to put these up in ways that you can download them if you want. This is one everybody who loves independence and liberty ought to own. Look how small that is. Jimmy Zinker knows this one. This is The Law by Frederick Bastiat. If everything we did ran according to the basic principles in this, our country wouldn't be nearly as much trouble as it's in. We're going to cover this afterwards. It's the Written on the Heart, the case for natural law. Now, for those of you who think that natural law and civil government have nothing to do with the Bible, Written on the Heart, you know where you find that first in the Bible? That's the new covenant promise from Jeremiah. It says, I'm going to put my law, Yahweh speaking through Jeremiah says, I'm going to put my law in their heart. Well, Christians, you're real good at, yeah, I want that new covenant. But you forget, he says, I'm going to put my Torah in your heart. Oh, no, you throw that out the door. You take the grace, but you don't want the law. If you want the liberty, but you're going to throw the Constitution away, same thing. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get the liberty. Guess what happens if you throw the Torah away? You don't get the grace. You don't earn it. If you don't understand that, next Wednesday we start the very basics of biblical belief. And I mean, this is a Bible. This is God. How do you know? Basics. But also, Written on the Heart, that's Romans 1 and 2. That's Romans 1 and 2 for people who never even hear about the Bible. His law is still written on your heart. And that's Romans 1 and 2. That's where this man said this came from. The two treaties of government, a letter concerning toleration, John Locke. And he says that this book here comes directly from Romans 1 and 2. Per this man's words, we're going to start going over that. And I'm going to show you, if you want to listen, that the liberty that we all want to claim, that road right there that led to Lexington Green, that led to the formation of this country, it is thoroughly biblical through and through. You cannot separate this country from its biblical origins and expect to keep the blessings that came from the system our founding fathers built for us. You can't separate the two. And just so that you want to be interested here, as soon as I started talking about the Bible, the numbers on Facebook up here, in my screen, I see it up here in this corner. They'd been up around 7, 8, 9 all day, down to 3 now. But the numbers on Rebel are staying constant. If I talk about worldly things, my Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch account, that stays high. People like that. I start talking about, worldly things, Rumble tends to go down. I start talking about biblical things, the numbers reverse. And the people watching on social media, they don't want to watch me. The people on Rumble, they'll stay put. When the numbers are watching are high on both, and usually because I got one foot in each realm. This is why I've kept this. This is why. Because it talks to me live during the show. I can't wait for the real Charlie to get here and get to see it too. It'll freak him out. So the purpose of what I want to do, I've got to find a way for those who want to be in class. And you all know by now that the theme of this show is a classroom. So if you're going to be in class, if you're going to be studying in our classroom, I want you to start seeing what it is I've learned over my lifetime. You have to understand you're dealing with a teacher who reads on average between 1,000 and 2,000 pages a month. And I don't read Harlequin romances. The books I read are tough, usually for the average person. I love them. I was made to gobble them up. And I love this stuff. I read on average 3 to 5 books a month. If you were in my house right now, you'd find there are 4 books in my house that I'm currently reading at the same time. 2 of them I've read before. I'm rereading them. I do that a lot. But I'm reading 4 books at once, and I know where I'm at in all 4 books, and I'll bounce from one to the other. It's kind of like going to different classes in college. You go from this class to that class to that class. That's where I learned to read 4 books at one time, or 5. I very rarely read more than 4 or 5 at a time. But I've had as many as 6 or 7 at a time going. But I read them all at a time because usually when I'm doing this, they complement each other. One builds off the other. I don't pick the books that way. It might shock you. I'll share with you. How do I pick the books I read? I've got bookshelves of books. And I haven't read all of them. But I'll be sitting there looking, and I'll just stare at the bookshelf, and all of a sudden a book will jump out at me, and I'll pick it up, and I start reading. And then for whatever reason, I'll be walking by one of my bookshelves, and I'll look over, and there's another. I'll pick that up, and I start reading, and I go, hey, those 2 are connected. That's cool. And then I'll realize, hey, that book I've read before, that one's kind of, and I'll go start reading one I've reread, and I'll reread it. And then I'll read all 3 or 4 of them. It's like I'm being led to read this book, that book, this book, that book. And they always complement and coincide with each other. I chalk it up to the Holy Spirit. I've got some books on my shelf I've been wanting to read. And every time I sit down to try and read them, I can't get into them. And every now and then that'll happen. I'll pick that book up that I've been wanting to read. And then today I pick it up and it just clicks. The next thing I know, I'm 4 chapters into it. I wasn't supposed to read it yet. Let's see who's on the phone here. Good morning, caller. You're on the Road to Concord with Joe.
Good morning.
Hey, Jimmy. Good to hear from you, man.
Just curious, what are the 4 books?
The 4 books I'm reading right now, one of them is At First We Misunderstood. It's about reading Genesis. It's about the fact that Genesis is not meant to be a scientific explanation of how the world was created. I'm reading 2 books on the Hebrew Jesus, taking you back to the first century of how he actually talked to the people he was teaching, and the fact that he was a Jew from the house of, tribe of Judah. He's a Jewish rabbi, and that's how we should be reading him. And then the 4th book is actually on Greek history. It's showing me the difference between Hebrew thinking and Greek thinking. So all 4 are tied together. And
you're right. They're not books that normal people would sit down with.
Nope. And I didn't pick them that way. They just fall off my bookshelf over a period of a week and a half. And I'm well into all of them.
I had to ask because that's telling.
How's that telling?
It's very telling. What makes Joe tick? I mean, the people that are still listening to you after all this time must see something. I know I saw something the first time I had a conversation with you. So, okay, so what is this guy ingesting that is the fuel for this? So I had to call and ask, what are the 4 books?
You know how much I love people who do things like that, Jimmy.
Well, yeah, what are the 4 books? You mentioned you're reading 4 books and you bounce from one to the, but nothing about what they actually are. That's where we need to look from this side, looking in your direction.
See, now you just hit on something that I don't know if it's just me or if it's a weakness. But a friend of mine, Sharky, y'all know him now. Y'all are getting to know Sharky. He told me the other day that he's realized I'm a wealth of information, but I won't go try and jam it down your throat. If you don't ask, I won't share it with you anymore.
Yeah, and no, it's not a weakness, because those who would benefit from that information, who would draw from it, have got to do something. I mean, my grandfather used to tell me as a boy, he said, son, I wish I could open a lid on your head and pour this in, but I can't.
I know that feeling.
And dang it, man, and it brings tears to my eyes now, because it wasn't until long after he was gone that I realized where he was coming from there.
Well, the reason I mentioned that to you is when you met me, I was just going through that phase in my life where I quit trying to force myself on everybody. You ran into me when I was still doing it a little bit more than I should. Definitely more than I do it now. So
I never saw it. I never saw it. The people that are going to benefit from you are not going to need you to do anything with them but be yourself. And they'll, like a moth comes to a flame.
Yes.
If the moth prefers darkness, he's not going to migrate to the flame, but he's got to be careful too, because he may be migrating to a headlight.
Yes, I understand that.
But this whole thing here, this brings me, I made a connection there that prompted my call to ask about those books.
Mm-hmm.
And you wanted us to give our input on the things that we like about the show and the things that we don't like. There's nothing really that I don't like. I have a little bit more of a hard time when you get into the, shall we say, the George Norrie kind of stuff.
Yes.
But you already knew that. You and I have discussed that. Where I thrive in what you have to offer is in making those firefly connections.
Yes.
I told you at very ancient in our conversations with each other, very early on, I told you that one of the things that baffles me is I tend to be able to connect things that it astounds me that my peers can't make the connections. For example, very early in my life, in my late teens, early 20s, back in the 1980s, when my mother and my grandparents were voting Democrat,
mm-hmm.
I began to realize and see connections because of the things they were valuing. By they, I mean the Democrats, not my parents and my grandparents, but the Democratic politicians of the 80s. Things that they were valuing, where they found value and beauty in the world, I connected directly to those Soviet communists that my same parents and grandparents were warning me that I should fear.
Yeah.
You see, and it created contradictions in my psyche.
I get it. I understand.
And ultimately, I turned away from that party even though my grandfather once told me, son, always vote for the Democrat. He's for the little man. Yeah, well, so is every communist I've ever heard speak.
Exactly.
He's for the little man, all right.
Well,
so when you're teaching how to draw these connections and these parallels that go back to Woodrow Wilson, I'm of the belief that it's what my countrymen need.
Yeah, the George Norrie stuff. Let me tie what you just said to something else. Yesterday's show, where we were showing all the little refrains of 9/11, 9/11, 9/11 in the media.
Mm-hmm.
I found a picture that goes all the way back to 1963, where one of the people from the New World Order is sitting on a desk addressing his audience, and he's holding his left hand. He's got his watch on his left hand, and he's holding his left hand with his right, such that he's purposely angling the watch at the camera, and it's got the time 9/11 on it, and it's frozen there at that position because this is a video. It stays on that time. What I've realized, this is not the New World Order that caused 9/11, folks. The connection here for this particular incident goes all the way back to the Bible in Isaiah 9. This goes back to the Harbinger book that Jonathan Cahn wrote. That 9/11 refrain, that's not New World Order type stuff per se. That's a spiritual refrain. That is a spiritual version of what you just mentioned, where you see the refrains of Woodrow Wilson in our material world. The reason we keep seeing that 9/11 everywhere is because that's a spiritual refrain pointing to a future prophecy.
Well, and it's also interesting that it turns out that it's, how you can get a policeman real quick.
Yes. How you can get help, 911. Yes, I get it.
Now, let me also say on that subject real quick, when I encounter those kinds of things, I don't write the person like George Norrie. I never wrote George Norrie off as an idiot or a flake, but I take those things and I file them away in a cabinet somewhere in my mind for a future time in case I may need it.
Yes. And that's the point that Jimmy tends to like about me, is my filing cabinet is big and it is right there in the front of my brain.
Yeah. Oh, God. The thing that's always really just astounded me about you is how we'll be having a conversation like this and you will, oh, yeah, that's just connected to verse so-and-so, book so-and-so, and, just about give the number sentence. And I just, the fact that you can hold all that in a memory bank, when I would forget my name if I didn't write it once a day. That's amazing to me. That's what's really impressed me with you is your ability to recollect things precisely. Well, what I wouldn't give to have that gift.
Oh, but you remember certain things I can't. You can quote quotes word for word. I can't do that because I'm a concept and ideas guy. You're a details guy.
On the subject of connecting Firefly, since you mentioned a quote, the reason why I believe that is so important, I once read a quote. Actually, I think I heard it in an audio book. It was a quote that Ayn Rand had made. Somebody was talking about her and something that she had said, and she referred to an attribute that the kids in the hippie movement were pursuing at the time in a protest. And she referred to it as nihilism. So I thought, nihilism, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. So I went and I Googled it. And it was a movement from the Bolsheviks and the Bolshevik Revolution back in 1900. They called it nihilism. And when I read the definition of what it was, I went, my God, that's cancel culture.
Yes. Destroy everything.
I connected the Fireflies.
Yep.
And brought it right back to my own doorstep in my own place and time.
You know how we were talking about psyops yesterday? You do know that the hippie movement in this country was a Russian psyop, right?
Makes perfect sense.
When the wall came down in Glasnost, when they opened the records, all you got to do is go Google it in the right place. Well, not Google. You use an alternative search engine, but look for Glasnost records of Soviet hippie psyop in the United States. However you search for it, you will find it. The KGB's records they spent millions of dollars pushing that movement in this country, which is why the hippie movement was so anti-America.
Man, after I read the book, The Devil and Karl Marx.
Yes, it's on my desk.
And the stuff that guy reveals in that book that the Soviet communists were behind that happened in this country from about the 1930s forward throughout the fall of, but it's even going on now. It's just that the Soviet Union per se has passed away. But what they did with the Catholic Church.
Yes, and nope, it was also the Protestant church. They got into the
yeah.
Protestant church in 1948.
Yeah, but in the Catholic Church, you're seeing all of these perverted priests.
Yes.
Connects right to that operation that the Soviets did in the Catholic Church, and even names. There was this one woman that was responsible for installing a bunch of priests in the Catholic Church that in some way or another were connected back to the Soviet Union.
Yes.
And it wasn't just in the United States, it was throughout the world.
See, this is some of the things we got to teach on Thursdays, Jimmy. On Throwback Thursdays.
There you go.
We have got to make people aware of all this stuff, because the Soviets, the Russians went directly at the things that our founding fathers said were the pillars of this society. Went after our family, went after our religion.
Yep.
And our morality and our dedication to our law and our history.
I would not be surprised to find out that those SOBs are responsible for underarm wetness. I mean, that's a joke, of course.
I know.
You're not laughing, but it seems like they're into everything.
Well,
it's amazing the strings they were pulling.
Secular humanists flat out say that everything's political. Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, Road Dog 71 on Rumble, he says it sounds like the CIA KGB connections. Yes. Folks, do not forget that the Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the FDR administration, was riddled full of communists. Card-carrying communists. Nobody cared back then because Russia was quote-unquote an ally.
Mm-hmm.
They were not our friends. They were undermining the FDR's administration even in that time.
Just remember, Woodrow Wilson came to power in 1912.
Yep.
The Bolshevik Revolution got hot in 1919.
Yep.
It didn't start that year. Something led up to that.
Yep.
So, the history coincides. It's a parallel.
Yes.
There's a firefly.
And the common firefly between both Lenin and Wilson is the Fabians. Even Hitler. Yep. George Bernard Shaw, people go. We've got to take a Thursday and introduce you to George Bernard Shaw. You know what? Jimmy, you just gave us next Thursday's show.
Yeah, this is what I think that Americans who still care need to learn. And I don't know if that ability to make the parallel connections comes naturally or if it's something that can be learned. But man, if you can teach it, even if only 5 people get it from you, we can't do no more than we can do.
Yeah, but
we should try to do what we can.
From the feedback I get from you in the class, that seems to be where I do have a talent for connecting a bunch of seemingly unconnected things. I seem to be able to explain to you guys why and how I see it is connected. Because you're not the only one that, when I take time to explain it, you're not the only one that goes, oh, I see it.
Yeah.
And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah, back in 1998, when I first started metal detecting, I dug an ultra rare Confederate Georgia State seal button.
Yes.
At the time, it was one of only 7 known to exist.
Cool find.
And I dug a cuff. And the back mark, the maker's mark on my cuff was riveted soldered.
Mm-hmm.
But the coat buttons of that make are S. Isaacs and Campbell back mark, the bigger buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been a mystery. Okay. Now, how is this relevant to what you and I are talking about? Well, this is how it's relevant. I got to studying the 2 button makers, just satisfying my own curiosity. And I found that 2 brother-in-laws, one worked for S. Isaacs and Campbell and the other worked for Riveted and Soldered. And both button makers were based in Birmingham, England.
There you go.
There's your connection. That's your fireflies.
Yep.
Apparently, these 2 guys worked together on that one button project. So, that's how you solve these mysteries.
Yes, Cicero, the person who doesn't want to learn anything about the past is condemned to live the life of a child forever.
Yes.
The past drives the present drives the future.
Pick out the one you want, and I'll cook it. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I'm talking to my granddaughter.
You're all right, man.
But,
family first.
That's what I wanted to point out, Joe. And closing, just to make it, to make my point. I believe that that is a very important asset, to be able to look at two things that are happening in our government and see the parallels, and then make that connection. Most of my peers can't seem to do that. And a lot of times it looks, it's so simple to me, but I can't even explain it to them and make them understand it.
No, I get it, Jimmy. I understand. Well, I appreciate the call, brother.
If A is true, then by the nature of an alphabetic letter, P must also be true.
Yes.
All right, bro. Have a good morning.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
The one thing where I differ from Jimmy's call just now, and it's not a bad thing. He's not going to mind me telling you this. It's not that people can't do it. They don't want to. And that's a big difference. This is where I get myself in trouble a lot of times. I know you can do this. I know you can do this, but you don't want to. I'm not responsible for making you want to. You are. And that's where one of my personal biases come in. I have a low tolerance for willful ignorance. So many people in the world, you don't have to learn from me. Go learn from somebody else. I'm not the only one that knows these things. I've told people before, all I do is put the puzzle together. I collect the pieces from other men and women. I stand on the back of intellectual giants. It makes me look better than what I am. But if all those men and women are going to take the time to write a book to give me the knowledge and what that they had to suffer and bleed and whatever work for, and I can't be bothered to just read it and assimilate it and learn from it myself, shame on me. Shame on you. Now, real quick, hopping just fast change here, man. Classmate in Rumble, Jason, he says he was reading Exodus 21:22 last night, and a question called to mind. Is natural law different from the law given to us in Exodus from the Lord to Moses? The quickest, easiest, this is a simplified answer, Jason, simplified. Natural law is the 10 Commandments. The law of Moses is the constitutional law to the nation of Israel, Hebrew people. So natural law is to the declaration as the law of Moses is to the Constitution. Hopefully that'll help you, sir. Here's a question here in the comment. Marianne says, may not want to, but may not have faith in one's self. Never give up on yourself, Marianne. You're your number one cheerleader. You're responsible for yourself. You can do it. And in your case, I know you can. I know Marianne, folks. We got a history. We go back to high school. Smart woman here. Life's beat her down. She can do it. This is something that I addressed once before when I was talking about our military terms, Marianne. When you're in the service, you got something you don't think you can do, one foot in front of the other. Left foot first, right foot, left foot, right foot. Next thing you know, you've got that 10-mile hump underneath your belt. It's behind you. And even though you get tired as you do this because you're carrying that heavy pack, you also get stronger up here. And you learn to ignore that physical pain. I know it sounds hard. And that's why the military tells you, one foot in front of the other. Just left foot, right foot. That worry about the first step, then worry about the next step, worry about the next step. It'll come. It'll come. This is why those of us in the service who had done more than one hitch, your first enlistment when you're a new recruit, new Marine or a new soldier, the older guys with all the stripes on their shoulders, they seem to have a whole different attitude, man. They were like, they weren't human. And that's why. Is in that first 4 years, they grew that heavy outer bark. It was a mental toughness that they had to acquire. All of us need to do that. We can do it. We can all do it. All you have to do is choose to do it. And then just left foot, right foot. And it doesn't matter what direction you start out in, folks. Just go. How many of y'all have seen the movie Battlefield Los Angeles? Where the aliens invade Los Angeles and the Marines go in there? And you got that one staff sergeant who who got some people killed, or had a bad situation in the previous engagements. People died. So he's got this struggle going on with the Marines under him now. They all know about it, and they don't know if they can trust him. And they got a brand new officer, brand new lieutenant, just out of OCS, Officer Candidate School. Well, the old battle-hardened, there's a scene in that show where the old battle-hardened Marine NCO, the one that everybody doesn't know if they can trust, he tells the officer, go left, go right, I don't care. We'll follow you no matter what you do. Just make a decision. This is one of the biggest problems I've struggled with in my life. Being so afraid of making the wrong move that you make no move. Guess what? No move is the wrong one 100% of the time. Even when you're supposed to, the Bible says, just be still and know that I am God. Just being still and not moving at all is still the wrong move, because the Bible tells you to still be busy doing what it is he's given you to do. What that means is be still. Don't be charging down the road trying to do everything yourself. Be about your daily work, but watch for him to move in the things that he's supposed to take care of, not you. So in our life, just pick a direction and go. As you start walking, you'll realize, maybe not that direction, and change direction after you've already started moving. So like with this show, just tuning into this show every day or trying to make it a habit to catch it, the rerun, that's picking a direction. Now, let's say you're into it. I ask everybody to give me at least a month. Yeah, that's 20 shows. It's 40 hours of your life. Tune it on while you're doing something, man. You're peeling potatoes, turn it on in the kitchen or whatever. I don't care what you're doing. You're working in your shop. You're cleaning your shop. You're cleaning your house too. Watch it at work. I don't care how you do it. Give me a month. If after a month there's nothing here for you, by all means, go find somebody else who feeds you. Please don't stay here if you're not being fed. You see, that's one of the things that's going to make us different. Everybody else, you got to stay here. You got to stay, because all they want is your numbers for their advertising. That's not going to be us ever. We are not going to dance to the advertiser's tune. That's being unequally yoked. That muzzles you. So I'm going to tell you, if we're not feeding you, go where they'll feed you. I can't feed everybody. I know that. And by feed, that's a biblical term. In other words, I'm not going to serve you what you need. I'm not the one for you. Somebody else is. Go find them. Please. But if I am helping, pick just one thing I bring up. A book, a blog post. Follow up behind a video I linked to you in your homework, in your show notes. Just pick one thing and go watch it or read it and think on it. Ooh, did that support what did it say what Joe said it says? Told you it says? Does it support Joe's argument? Think about it. Question me. I'm your teacher. Beat up on me. Practice on me. I don't care. Send me emails. Make comments in the comment section. Don't be afraid of it. If you comment in one of my comment sections and the classmates give you a hard time, you're going to get defended by the teach, because the teacher will come after the classmates. I won't permit that in our congregation here, in our little group, in our class. Ultimately, I'm the dictator. If you're going to pick on each other out there, I'll silence the one that's being a bully, especially on Rumble. The live chat's got a cool little button. I can snooze you for a while, where nobody will see your comments until you behave. Say, well, Joe, that's not free speech. Nobody said the classroom was free speech. Now, you have a very lenient teacher. Stay civil, and I won't care what you say to each other, because that's the whole point of learning. Be ugly to each other. I'll smack the bully, because I want everyone participating, or at least feel comfortable doing it. But find something we present and then run it to ground. And by that, I mean, pursue it until there's nothing left. Say, okay, I read this article, and that article linked to another article. So read the one that linked to it. Well, that one links to something else. So you end up reading 5 articles before there are no more links. You've run it to ground. Now, whether or not you totally understand everything that was being discussed is not the point. Now you're aware of it. Now it's in your head. If and when you ever need that information again, it'll be there. You may not recall it perfectly, but you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, didn't I read something somewhere about that? Now you know to go look for it again. That's that saying that was on my philosophy department's front door to the department. It said the half of knowledge is knowing where to find knowledge, meaning half the battle of acquiring knowledge is knowing where to find it. I don't take credit for much of anything on this show. I don't reinvent the wheel. Other people have already done it. Man, Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. All I see that's different is how this and that are connected to each other. And the only reason I see it is because the things I study and read are the database for me is so broad that I see things that other people won't because I've got more information in my computer than they do. That's it. That's all. Got more input. That's it. You want to see things connected? Put more input into your head. Let me explain something to you real quick now. Most of your television programming and most of your music and most of the stuff you're consuming in entertainment media and on social media, that's not data. That's programming. What's the difference, Joe? Data is just irrelevant information. Programming is how you use it. So I can give you the best data in the world, but if I give you programming that tells you to throw it out the window, you're not going to be able to use that data. You need to learn to program yourself. Exactly. Marianne says it's a distraction. Bingo. Exactly. It's a distraction. Program yourself. You can decide who you're going to be. Do it. What type of person do I want to be? Then be it. You know what Benjamin Franklin used to do? When he had a bad habit, he would take 30 days and he'd try to break it. And he'd work on that one habit. Or if he wanted a good habit, he'd work on doing that good habit for 30 days. You know why? Because if you concentrate on that one thing all day long for 30 days, what it is you're trying to do actually becomes a habit. So he could teach himself good habits and he could break himself from bad habits in 30 days. And he did one at a time. Well, he was a philanderer. If that's all you're thinking about with Ben Franklin, congratulations. Somebody programmed you. Yes, he was. He was also brilliant. He was also very generous, gave away tons of money. So we're going to throw away the good because all we can concentrate is on the bad. And by the way, in a society that praises itself on its TikTok hookups or whatever, the Tinder hookups or whatever the heck it is the kids got going on out there, why are you frowning on a man for being a philanderer? Huh? Hypocrites. Focus on that one. That's one of the best ones we could all work on. Don't be a hypocrite. And not because being the hypocrite's a problem. That's the fallacy of tu quo q. You say, well, what you're saying can't be right because you don't listen to your own teaching. That's a fallacy. The point of being a hypocrite is if you know you're doing wrong, what you're doing wrong is the point. You know it's wrong. That's the point. Focus on what you know to be right. So that's another thing we're going to have to teach on Fridays is Stoics, the Stoic method for the ancient Greeks. How to know what you know. See, the Hellenistic thinking, Greek thinking, it doesn't go hand in hand with biblical thinking, but it doesn't have to be an enemy to biblical thinking either. It just has to be taught correctly. Sound teachers. There are not many of us left in the world. Do I count myself as one? Yeah, but only because you guys tell me I am. I trust your judgment more than mine. I react to my audience, to my class. This has been a great day for me. I don't like these type of classes. I feel like I'm just blithering idiot right now, rambling on in search of an idea or a thought. But I know that the type of things I'm talking about register with you because all of the chat boards are lit up like a Christmas tree today. Y'all are talking back to me. I love that. I crave your input and your comments because that tells me how to feed you. When you let me just talk to the screen or the camera all on my own, I don't know what to feed you other than what I've planned. And I don't know whether or not that's hitting home. For better or for worse, I got to program you. I got to train you to talk to me during the class. Ask questions. Tell me where you need clarification. Ask where I've left something out. I can't serve you if I don't know what to do. I can't. My goal, my desire is to serve. But if all I'm going to do is serve my own intentions to teach this, that, or the other my way, I'm actually just serving the idiot in the screen here in front of me. Me. Because, in the studio, I see what you see. I'm watching the live feed. I need to know what you guys need from me. Okay, I told you you're going to get out of class just a little early today. So I'm going to let you go 15 minutes early. I do have some stories I've already started saving for Manic Monday. Oh boy. Yeah. Monday could be a bumpy ride. We'll see if I actually teach on those. The things in the world. Monday, we'll address that airplane, that Russian jet flying up to the American drone. Do me a favor over the weekend. Find yourself somebody in the Air Force that knows something about aviation and listen to them. Let them guide you through what's going on in that video. Do not listen to the media, because that video doesn't show you what you're being told it shows you. Trust me. I know about aviation. Good gosh, if it hadn't been for my bad eyes, I would have been a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force instead of a Marine. But I know what's going on in that photograph, and it's not what you're being told. Not in the details. So we'll cover that Monday and a few other things as well. I love each and every one of you. I do. Even Dodo Cop. I thank y'all for participating today. You've done my heart good. Please email me if you can think of anything that might help this show, something that you don't like. Bad, and as long as it's constructive criticism, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Show me how to be better. Teach me what it is that you show me what you need from me, what you'd like from me. And every one of you stay safe over the weekend. Y'all have a good one. Stay safe. We'll see you back here Monday, 9 Central, 10 Eastern. Y'all take care. Bye.